My name is Duncan Wijnberg. I am a data analyst at the Australian Bureau of Statistics, and today I'll be talking about defining populations within linked administrative data. So the ABS is in the fortunate position to have access to a growing collection of government admin data from some of our key partners. And some of the key data sets we have are listed there. They include Medicare enrolments data, personal income tax data, social security and benefits data, death registrations, migration, census data, and there are many other data sets we have access to as part of our data integration program. Another important aspect of our data integration program is our person linkage spine. And this can be thought of as an asset or an index that we can use to link persons across multiple different admin data sets. So we construct our person linkage spine using our three core data sets. So those are Medicare, income tax data, and social security data. And using that, we come to a list of unique individuals that exist across the admin data. So the coverage of our spine is all persons resident in Australia at any point between 2006 and 2016. And it covers more than 32 million persons. So using our linkage spine and our admin data, we can link admin data together to create new data assets that can be useful for conducting a lot of social research. So obvious advantages of using linked admin data would be very high coverage of the population. The linked data would cover a wide range of topics and cover a long time period. It also allows certain kinds of longitudinal analysis that tend to be difficult with other kinds of collections. So for instance, it's possible to do analysis on a transition out of education into employment, for example. A common challenge that we have when using linked admin data is that our admin data should ideally represent the Australian population at a particular point in time. But the issue we have is that both our admin data and our linkage spine span multi-year time periods, and the different admin sources often cover different subpopulations of the Australian population. So we ideally need a method for descoping records. So if we think back to our person linkage spine, that has more than 32 million persons on it. But if we looked at, say, estimated resident population at a given time point, say June 2016, we know that in the Australian population there are only 24 million persons. So ideally what we need is some sort of flag or indicator that we can apply to the data to subset it just to those records that we believe are in the Australian population at a given point in time. So a basic approach to scoping would be for us to define a reference day we're interested in, and then remove records that obviously are not applicable to that day. So individuals that are born after that reference day, those that are deceased before then, and then we could also use migration data to remove people who we believe have left the country over that time. So this little graphic shows the age distribution in grey of the estimated resident population. And that blue line is what the distribution of our linked admin data looks like if we apply those basic scoping rules. So while the trend somewhat follows ERP, there are obviously some notable areas of overcoverage, particularly in the sort of middle years from the sort of early 20s right up until the late 60s. So this overcoverage can actually be due to many factors. So there could be deaths in our admin data that we don't know about. There could also be migration from Australia that we have not sort of captured in our admin data. There could also be errors in the source admin data. So the admin data might have multiple, like a duplication of person records, or could have information missing. And a flow on from that, we could also have errors in our linkage or how we've created our spine. So a lack of information might mean that we aren't able to link two records together. So ideally, for an improved scoping approach, we would want some sort of method that can somehow address some of these issues that we believe we're seeing. So the approach that we are very interested in looking at the moment is an activity-based scoping approach. And what this involves is looking at person records and the activity of person records to decide whether they are likely to be in or out of the population. So specifically, we've looked at activity in the past 12 months, and there's some of the examples listed there. Like we've looked at Medicare, like whether persons have received Medicare in the past 12 months, earned income in the past financial year, or received a social security benefit in the past 12 months. And based on that activity or lack thereof, we can make a decision of which records we suspect we can remove from the Australian population. So this graph is similar to the one I showed earlier. Again, we've got estimated resident population in grey, and that purple line is our linked admin data, but using our activity-based scoping rules. So what's pretty evident is that it's a far closer match to ERP, very well aligned to estimated resident population. So yes, as I said, using the activity-based scoping approach, we find that we have good alignments to ERP, and this alignment holds true for some of the key breakdowns we're interested in, like age, sex, and state and territory. And we're also finding that this alignment is still reasonably good at most small areas. So generally within a few percentage difference from ERP. Now, there are some exceptions to that. Northern Territory, in particular, is one where our admin data is more difficult to match to ERP. But generally speaking, we're finding very promising results with this activity-based approach. So some limitations. There's obviously always a balancing act between addressing overcoverage and potentially introducing undercoverage of the population. So based on some analysis we've done, we know that there are certain groups within the Australian population that are less likely to have a lot of activity reported in government data sets. So examples are listed there that includes young children and students, and perhaps also temporary migrants. So we need to be careful if removing records based purely on activity, that we aren't potentially introducing undercoverage for these kinds of persons. The other issue I guess we need to be aware of is that a lot of the analysis and stuff we've done so far is based at the aggregate level. And so while aggregate numbers might look good, we need to understand whether we are making the correct decisions at the individual record level. So some future directions for this work. We're obviously very interested in any refinements we can make to our scoping methods. We're also interested in looking at additional data that we can draw on as a sign or a source of activity for a record. And then evaluation. There are lots of different things that we're interested in pursuing. So quantifying our over and under coverage of the population, perhaps trying to do some more unit level analysis to understand whether we're making the correct decisions at a person level. And then also some comparisons with alternate methodologies that might work. So just checking that there aren't other methods we could be applying that would yield similar results. Thank you very much.